is how do we fall in love with life again, despite all the stuff of life, despite the news, hello, despite our belief systems, despite our prejudices and our, difficult finances and all those things. How do we learn to love our life? How do we learn to love the stuff that shows up, that we might call icky, that doesn't fit our idea of a perfect life, of a perfect moment? So that's what we're going to talk about. And sometimes we feel like so much has happened, we're so tired, so much has gone on, we're so set in our ways, things are so difficult, we've locked ourselves, I like the lyrics, we've shut ourselves in, we've closed the windows, we've locked the doors because we're afraid of the darkness out there and, by the way, within. And so this invitation is for us to open to this idea that we can take off those blinders. He says, what does it take for the blind man to see beyond the monsters, so that we can actually embrace that, see that there's more than meets the eye on the surface, and actually experience this walk in the world in our humanity as what he calls a wonderful game. So I just really invite you to stretch a little bit this morning, because if you're like me, and I'm sure some of you are, we seem to be surrounded by a lot of cynicism. Is that true? Things seem difficult in the world. Things sometimes seem difficult in general. And so this idea, how do we face all this stuff, all of these things in our experience, all this messy stuff, that actually makes our life pretty rich if you stop and think about it, if you look retroactively at the stuff that felt like a monster in the moment. See this messy, complex human condition. See that and be able to face it, and not only face it and survive it, but to love it and to live through it in a thriving way. That's what we're talking about. There's great power in having the courage, love this image, there's great power in having the courage to take a look at the things that are holding us back. What are they for you? What are these things that have gotten in the way? Name them. Talk about the things that are in your experience out there, because there's a lot out there that's scary. I watch TV occasionally, and I understand some of the dynamics of what's going on out there. There's a lot out there, and I know there's a lot going on within myself. There's a lot of frustration and disappointment and those kinds of things going on within me. But when I have an opportunity to look under the bed at the monsters that are hiding there, my perceptions about it being a frightful world, and then what happens is, once I look under the bed, lift up the bed skirt a little bit, guess what? Just a tiny little ray of light goes under there to that monster thing under there, and all of a sudden, we get a new perspective. And sometimes, if we're not willing to lift that curtain just a little bit so we can get a new perspective, we stay in that empty place. We stay in that scared place. We stay in that tired place, that place that feels tired and stale and flat, like life is not, all that much fun. Does anybody get what I'm saying here? Yeah, like life, yeah, there we go, I see a hand. Life is not all that much fun. So this idea is we've got to be willing to recognize what's holding us back, recognize where we're placing our attention, recognize where we're cynical. Cynicism is the great enemy of hope, of love, of compassion. Cynicism really does, it's sort of like the icky worm in an apple. It starts making everything go rotten. Recognize those places where we get poked. I love this image of these animals poking at each other. Isn't that fun? I didn't see anybody getting too mad, did you? But they're they're just neutralizing it with love, right? They're just going, oh geez, not you again. See, that's the idea. The Thich Nhat Hanh approach to our life experience. Oh, my old friend toothache. Oh, my old friend poverty. Oh, my old friend relationship messes. Oh, my old friend achy body. Oh, my old friend sleepless night. Whatever those things are for you, we have to learn how to make friends with these things in such a way that they don't take so much of our attention. We got to recognize where we're getting poked. And sometimes when we're miserable, we're not sure what that poking place is about. Have you noticed? Oh, I get it. Maybe it's that. I was working with my granddaughter, custody messes, and we're trying to figure out why she was miserable. Came home miserable from a visitation with her father, and she couldn't figure it out. I said, well, honey, we're going to have to figure this out because you're miserable. And if you and I can't figure out what's going on, then we're going to have to get a professional. She says, oh, we're going to figure it out. So she sat there, and you could just see the little wheels turning, and I need to say she's 10 years old, and she doesn't get the depth of her despair. She's not there yet. But she says, well, maybe it was because my daddy wrapped up my hands in those boxing things, told me I needed to punch those target things, and that I need to take boxing because I'm getting older, and I have to learn how to protect myself. I'm going, well, maybe. But you see, she was willing to look at, in her mind, that struck a bell for her. Do you see what I'm saying? Maybe that's it. Or maybe that thing is it. Or maybe that thing is it. And look at it. Maybe it's not, but we got to be willing to look at it. So that, a lot of us have those places that get our attention that are not as obvious as wrapping our hands up in boxing tape or whatever that stuff is. We get those places that Eckhart Tolle calls pain body. Those places where we've been hurt in the past, where we've got some despair, some sorrow, some anger, some fear, something that's settled in a very deep place. He calls it the pain body. That's what we're talking about, those monsters that show up like those pain bodies that have those voracious appetites, just waiting to rear their ugly heads at us, and when we least expect them. That stuff that's got our attention, that stuff that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about when he talks about domestication. And remember Jeannie Chuba, she's no longer in our community. She is, but out afar. And those domestication issues where all of a sudden the monster becomes talking to mom on the phone on Thanksgiving, and mom saying, well, I sure hope you're not wearing trousers to Thanksgiving dinner. It's that kind of thing. Those little things start getting our attention and make us feel what? Unlovable, unworthy, dumb, whatever it is, unintelligent, whatever those things are, at the cellular level, ourselves and others, you see. Sometimes it's stuff like, in my case, a journey with addiction, with alcoholism. Sometimes it's a journey with, a perception of how your family should show up, and it didn't. Anybody got that going on? Anybody have, the way you wanted your life? There we go. Yeah, I hit a nerve there. I hear some sighs. You want your family to look a certain way, everybody love each other, and, show up. It doesn't happen, right? I know, I'm there. So these things that happen, how do we not let that suck the life out of us? How do we meet these monsters in the moment? How do we recognize them and give them less importance? Like Richard Carlson says, how do we not let them bother us? How do we allow them to be part of our experience? Whatever it is, these feelings split off, and this feeling dishonored, or this, whatever this stuff is, how do we take that stuff and cultivate the capacity to be present with it and not fight against it, not do battle with it, not make it our enemy, make it our friend, at least make it something that we can tolerate. We don't have to like it. We don't have to like it. And we don't have to make it okay. But if we can become peaceful with that thing, that, acceptance of that thing, all of a sudden, guess what? We feel empowered. And I'm going to share Pat's story because she's given us permission to talk about her journey with her diagnosis. Pat, our beautiful friend, Pat Gover, has gotten a very difficult diagnosis of cancer, and she's in a process. And by the way, Bob needs lots of prayer and love. been a very difficult time. And Dr. Callie and I were talking about Pat, and Pat had told both of us the same thing. This is how we deal with monsters in our life, and this is how we do it in a healthy, empowered way. Pat said, Judy, I think that those cancer cells are just confused. They just don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk to those cells, and I'm going to, tell them what I wanted to do, and I wanted to, do whatever her languaging is. You see, this is moving beyond the powerlessness of our monster, whatever that monster thing is, and taking your power back in an appropriate way. It isn't about becoming, totally collapsed into it or paralyzed by it. It's about going, all right, this monster's here. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to be present with it? And in this case, we're going to talk to those cells and tell them to get with it and not be so darn confused because it's a bother. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we've all got those things in our lives where we can empower ourselves to step into an experience of that monstrous thing that is not so debilitating, that fires up hope. See, when we're cynical, there's no hope. Callie says, we always have room for hope. We always have room for hope. Stop battling with that thing. Stop making war with it. Stop, she's not trying to kill those little cells. She's trying to direct them to do better. She wants to make them shape up. See? She's not trying to eradicate them. She's wanting those guys to shape up. Do your job. You're not doing it right. See? To feed what is best and most beautiful about the experience in a healthy way. On the spot. Because you know what? And this is a hard one. This is a real hard one. And especially when you get a difficult diagnosis like Pat has. The truth of the matter is, if we really believe what we teach, everything, everybody, every situation, every headline in the news has God's fingerprints on it. That's tough. We don't want to believe that sometimes, especially when it hurts, especially when it looks atrocious. We don't want to believe that. Everything has God's fingerprints on it. So our invitation is to recognize that within that thing that we do not like, within that thing that is causing us pain, within that monster under the bed that is scaring us to death, we have the capacity to recognize that yes, that stuff is what it is. And life is harsh, but life is miraculous. Life is devastating, but life is also tender. Life includes all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly. The stuff that hurts and the stuff that feels fabulous. We have to know how to acknowledge the monster under the bed. Make friends with that thing, whether we want to or not. Empower ourselves so that we don't go to war with whatever that thing is, and set an intention to be present with it. To pray and to move our feet. Do what is ours to do. This is not an invitation to sit back and go, oh well. This is an invitation. Yes, it is about going with the flow because it's about accepting the isness of the experience on the spot. But it's also about doing what is yours to do. Taking your power back. So remember those lyrics of John Denver's song. No matter what's going on, no matter how it looks, we are never too set in our ways to change our idea about it, to change our perception of it, to take our power back within that thing, to make that thing have some new meaning in our life experience, because that's what we're all about. We are meaning-making beings, and we're on a human journey, and not all of it feels fabulous. To have the courage to unlock the doors, to open the windows, so that the heart space is there, and to say, come on, guys, get unconfused. Get with the program. Get with the program. Look beyond the surface of these experiences. Own the pain, the disappointment, the fear, whatever the stuff is around the monster. And remember that any way you slice it, life is a wonderful thing. Life is a beautiful game. And there are pieces of it that sometimes don't look that way. If we can do that, then we can fall in love with our life again. On the spot, in the moment as it is. And this is where we find the capacity to be compassionate with ourselves, with life, and with everybody else. Thank you for listening.